What's up, Pythonistas, and welcome back to Programming at the Forge. We're going to pick up right where we left off last time and continue learning how to implement OOP, or Object-Oriented Programming. Now, if you'll recall, we've gotten as far as creating a class and giving that class both some instance and class attributes. Now today we're going to instantiate. Remember that word? We're going to instantiate a class and also give it some methods so it can interact with other instances. So let's jump right in. Now here we have a familiar sight, our character class with instance attributes of name, race, and age. Also present here is the homeworld class attribute with a value of Middle Earth. Remember though, this is more or less a blueprint of what an object will be. We haven't actually instantiated one yet. So let's do that right now. Let's bring our cursor back to the baseline and make an object called player1, and we'll assign it the class of character. The important part about this line is that here we get to provide values for the instance attributes. And we must do so carefully though, as they have to be in the same order as they are in the init method. In the parentheses of character, we'll put the string Gandalf for name, Maya for race, and the integer 11,000 for age. Gandalf's been around the block a few times. And that's it. Now we have an instance to work with. Now what's fun about this is now we can access any of this player's attributes by using the dot syntax, like so. Let's say I want to print player1's name to the console. I'll write my print function and in it put player1 dot name. There it is. The data for any instance or class attributes can be accessed this way. Now, while it can be useful to simply store information in a class this way, where OOP really shines is when you have instances interacting with each other. Now, let's say we're making a Lord of the Rings 2-player fighting game. First, we'll add a key attribute for such a game to our character class called HP. HP stands for hit points or health points, in case you didn't already know. Now let's also be sure to update our instantiation of player1 with an appropriate value for the attribute we just added. Let's make it easy and call it 100 HP. Now let's add some instance methods. Following our init method, we can add some new methods for our instances to perform. Let's make a simple one where the character introduces themselves. Now just like any other method or function, we'll start with the def keyword and we'll name this one intro. Now just like init, the first parameter for any instance method is always self. Now for this particular method though, we don't need to provide any other parameters as we simply want to print something to the console. Now here in the body of the method, we'll simply print a formatted string. This is a fun addition in Python 3, where we can pull data into a string simply by preceding the string with an F. In this case, I'll write F, start my string quotes, I am, then curly brace whatever data I want to place there. For this, I'll put self.name, exclamation point. Now, as always, it's a good idea to stop and check your code to make sure it's working how you expect it to along the way. So let's go down a few lines and use player1's method intro, and we should see I am Gandalf print to the console. Great! Next, let's add an attack method. Now, let's first define attack, give it the self parameter, but let's also give it another parameter. We'll call this one target. In the body, let's make a variable called damage and assign it to the integer 15. Now the next line here is critical to understand. Let's take the target.hp and subtract damage from it. Now you might be wondering, hey, we don't have a class called target. Now remember, parameters are just placeholders for the real data that gets passed in as an argument later on. Target will be another instance that has an attribute of HP that we can manipulate. Looks good! Now, let's make another instance of character to interact with. We'll take the same steps we did before, starting with the instance name. Now in the story, Gandalf has an epic battle with a Balrog named Durin's Bane. We'll call this object player2 and assign it the class of character with attributes for name, race, age, and HP. And presto, we have a new instance. Now let's go down a few lines and see how these can interact with one another. I'll make a little comment here that says game start. Now let's first have Gandalf introduce himself, and then Durin's Bane. Just to confirm that everything works, we'll run it and see the introductions printed to the console. Nice. Let's get to the action. Let's have Gandalf take the first swing. To show the effect this will have though, let's first print out the Balrog's HP to the console, which has the value it was given at instantiation, 100. Now let's use Gandalf's attack method. We'll write player1.attack, and for the argument, we'll provide the player2 object. After the attack, we'll print the Balrog's HP again to see what damage was done. And check it out! Durin's Bane is down to 85 HP. If you'll remember, we set the damage for attack to 15. 100 minus 15 is 85. So Gandalf's attack took in the target HP of Durin's Bane and subtracted 15 damage from the total. Rad. Now we have objects interacting with each other. There's some shortcomings here though. For example, it probably makes more sense for the Balrog to do a lot more attack damage. Now there will be cases where you want a lot of the fundamental parts of a class to stay the same, but you may want special methods for a particular instance. And we'll learn to address that when we go over class inheritance next time in the Forge.